Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We just finished an interesting discussion about Owlcat's DLC plans for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, and it got me thinking about their future plans overall. There are hints that Owlcat's next game is going to be something completely different from what they have done before, but I still cannot help but dream about their next Pathfinder game. Most of you already know by now that Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is one of my favorite CRPGs of all time, and while I have thoroughly enjoyed Owlcat's venture into the Warhammer universe, I am still very excited for them to get back into what they were previously known for. The question is, what's the best way for them to do that? There are a ton of different Pathfinder universes they could explore, all with their own lore and unique mechanics. In this video, I am going to review the top 5 Pathfinder related games I would like Owlcat to explore next. Keep in mind, I have never played the tabletop version of these games, so I am strictly speaking off what I have heard and read. Some of this information may be incorrect, and I know many of you have played these games or have strong feelings about what would work best, so I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. With all that being said, let's get into the list. Starting at number 5, we have Hell's Vengeance. This adventure path puts you in the role of the bad guys, working on behalf of the evil, devil-worshipping Cheliax Empire. A paladin of Iomedae and a knight-errant of the glorious Reclamation arrive in town to help citizens rise up against their tyrannical overlords, and your group is tasked with putting them down. From there, you interact with steadily more powerful figures all the way up to Queen Abigail. This path maxes out at level 17, exactly the same as Kingmaker. There are several things that appeal to me about this adventure path. Hell Knights are awesome in the Pathfinder games, and they have heavy representation within Cheliax. I cannot even imagine walking through a whole city of Regils. Speaking of Cheliax, it factors heavily into the Devil Mythic path within Wrath of the Righteous, but I was left wanting more. Hell's Vengeance would allow us to see the political systems up close, along with how these powerful leaders enter into terrible deals with their masters in the shadows. But perhaps most importantly, this game would scratch the tyranny itch for me. There just aren't many developers that are willing to take a chance and start the player off as the bad guy, for obvious reasons. This setting would be fantastic to explore as a good aligned player, trying to help the beleaguered citizens while also convincing dangerous maniacal Asmodeus worshippers that you can be trusted. We don't even need to get into why evil aligned players would love this adventure path. However, there are some things that give me pause and make me rank Hell's Vengeance lower. As I alluded to earlier, players for the most part don't like being the bad guy. I am not sure how you market this adventure in a way that it could be as successful as Owlcat's previous entries. We don't need to rehash the results of Tyranny's launch and the negative impact it had on Obsidian. I would hate to see something similar happen to Owlcat. On a similar note, from what I've read, the path really does revolve around you playing as an evil character. That probably means Owlcat would have to do quite a bit of customizing to craft an adventure that is appealing to both evil and good aligned characters. The additional work may not make sense compared to how much easier it would be to translate some of the other options on this list. Next up at number 4, we have Iron Gods. This path is set in a fantasy world and has you taking control of a group of adventurers who discover that there's a spaceship underneath the city where they live. Inside, they find the remains of aliens and strange creatures while also unearthing an evil plot that nobody else appears to be aware of. This path also maxes out at level 17. There are several things that appeal to me about this path. I am a big fan of the Shadowrun series of CRPGs, and the description of Iron Gods gives me a similar vibe, combining both fantasy and sci-fi elements to create a unique experience. Those games were very low budget, and I would love to see what Owlcat could do in a similar world with a AA budget combined with their fantastic writing. I mentioned in my Rogue Trader review that I'd love to see a game which lets you play as a cyborg. I don't know if that's the case here, but it definitely lets you play as an android, and obviously utilizing technology is a big part of the game, so I think Owlcat could really play around with the race options in a fun way. In addition, this adventure path is set in Numeria, which is a place that's been heavily hinted at in both Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Numeria houses the Technic League, which are evil spellcasters focused on hoarding technology that will help further their nefarious goals. I feel like it's rare that we get well-designed, evil, maniacal spellcasting villains, and this game could provide us with several of them. For those who have played Baldur's Gate 2, I keep dreaming of a world where we face alternate versions of Irenicus and Edwin over and over again. I think Owlcat is definitely capable of that, but there are a couple of things about this adventure path that give me pause. A lot of players have left comments on my videos saying that they do not like sci-fi and fantasy mixed together. I am not sure how widespread this feeling is, but I do think that type of game is a hard sell. Owlcat is still a small company, and they cannot afford to sink a ton of resources into a venture that has a very narrow base of fans. When Shadowrun developer Harebrained Schemes received a major influx of cash from Paradox, they decided to do a completely different game, and it makes me wonder if they concluded that there weren't enough Shadowrun fans to justify the significant increase in budget. Another thing that gives me pause is I haven't enjoyed the Numeria related content that Owlcat has provided thus far. I am not a fan of the Blackwater Dungeon and Wrath of the Righteous, although it's absolutely very well done. I also found the quest lines for Octavia and Ragangar to be rather mediocre. That doesn't stop me from being interested in Numeria because, again, I love sci-fi and evil spellcasters, but it does make me question if I would enjoy the actual content Owlcat creates for that world. Coming up at number 3, we have Skull and Shackles. This adventure has you playing as pirates. You'll start as a crew member on a ship and slowly make your way up to being a pirate lord. In the process, you'll get your own ship, plunder islands, loot secret treasure, and engage in naval combat against other ships. The path maxes out at 14 levels, and while that's less than Kingmaker or Wrath of the Righteous, I still think it's more than enough for players to have a great time. There are several things that appeal to me about this path. I am a big fan of fantasy games that allow you to use guns, and this option would obviously focus heavily on firearms, a big shift from Wrath of the Righteous. I am also very excited at the systems Owlcat could put in place to manage your ship. Roaming around different islands, picking up valuable crew members, and outfitting your vessel with the best weaponry could potentially be a lot of fun. Skull and Shackles places a huge emphasis on interacting with other pirates and integrating yourself into pirate society. You even speak regularly with villains who are way too powerful for you to defeat, creating a consistent source of frustration until you are stronger. Both of these aspects are a sharp change from Wrath of the Righteous and can provide fantastic role-playing opportunities. There are some other things about this path that don't appeal to me as much. It might be sacrilegious to hear, but I don't get all giddy at the thought of playing as a pirate. I've played plenty of those games already, and it's hard to make them feel distinctive. Not impossible, which is why this game is on the list, but Owlcat will really have to work to give us a unique experience. Another issue is that the game focuses so much on pirate society, the vast majority of foes you face are other pirates. That could seriously limit the variety of enemies, although Owlcat has shown they can focus heavily on one type of opponent while still making different combat encounters exciting. On a similar note, pirates are expected to engage in evil acts of plunder and tyranny. Not sure how Owlcat would allow people who are more good aligned to still have a good time playing this type of game. The last downside I would mention is ship combat. The only game I've seen that does ship combat well is Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Pillars of Eternity Deadfire tried to bring ship combat into an isometric CRPG, and the results were so universally reviled that they added a patch to let you skip over it. Hard to imagine how Owlcat could do a much better job, and it seems like ship combat is central to the experience, so that makes me say they should probably avoid diving into this path. Sitting at number 2, we have Rise of the Rune Lords. Your party has to fend off an attack by crazed goblins on your town. This battle alerts you to an ancient, evil, murderous rune lord who's attempting to reclaim his lost empire. You and your party members travel across Varisia to find him and put a stop to his plans. The max level for this path is 16. There's also a Return of the Rune Lord story that goes up to level 20. I know nothing about that path, so not sure if it would make more sense for Owlcat to combine the two games or potentially do the second one as an expansion. There are several things that appeal to me about Rise of the Rune Lords. Lords. The history of the Rune Lords is fascinating, and I would love to see what Owlcat does with the lore. You can potentially meet one of the Rune Lords during Wrath of the Righteous, and it's a very memorable conversation that made me want to see the setting. Alderpash is very entertaining to talk with and deliciously evil. He could potentially give you one of his strange runes, and I want to see more about how the rune system works. Well-developed crafting systems are very appealing to me, and it would be interesting to see Owlcat do one. It's also really cool how varied the enemies are in this path. Kingmaker focused on Fae, Wrath of the Righteous focused on demons, and some of the other paths I have listed here focus on a particular enemy group. In Rise of the Rune Lords, there's no central enemy type, so you'll regularly face everything from Fae and goblins to stone giants, ogres, and dragons. Honestly, I don't have any caveats about this path. Everything I've heard about Rise of the Rune Lords is fantastic, and I would love to see Owlcat bring it to life. But there can only be one #1 option, and for me, it's Starfinder. In this adventure path, Golarion, which is the planet Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous exist on, has blinked out of existence for reasons none can fathom. Far into the future, this event is referred to as the Gap, and the history of Golarion has been lost to time. Consequently, you have access to all the same races, spells, and abilities as those adventure paths, but the timeline is set far in the future, and now there's a heavy emphasis on traveling in space. I couldn't find a level cap for this adventure path, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's 17, like most of the other ones. So once again, this is an adventure path that heavily mixes fantasy and sci-fi elements. But for whatever reason, it seems like the fans who don't dig Iron Gods or Shadowrun are absolutely head over heels for Starfinder. Anytime a conversation comes up about which adventure path Owlcat should do next, Starfinder is always mentioned. Honestly, I am not going to bother providing caveats regarding this path or reasons why I think it could be fun, because I don't think any of that matters. The community clearly wants this, and that's enough for me to put it at #1, but there is one aspect of this option that I think we should discuss. There's been a lot of comments on my channel about how it would be a mistake for Owlcat to do Starfinder next because they just released Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. That game also heavily leans into science fiction, and it's also in space. Obviously, Owlcat's fingerprints are all over Rogue Trader, and the question becomes, could they make a Starfinder game that's different and appealing enough where fans will still gravitate towards it? My answer is yes, without question, for several reasons. First, Warhammer is grim-dark to the extreme, and while that greatly appeals to me, there are a ton of players who find it to be a huge turnoff. Even when you attempt to do the quote-unquote right thing, the results can be disastrous. Starfinder's setting isn't that way at all, and it'll be much more accommodating for players who want to be the good guys. Also, Rogue Trader forces you to be human, and the vast majority of your crew is human as well. There are only a couple of alien races you interact with, so the vast majority of your time is spent interfacing with other humans. Again, that's not the case at all in Starfinder, so there's much more freedom for Owlcat to let you play as and interact with strange and exotic species. Finally, in Rogue Trader, you play as someone who is essentially royalty, and everywhere you go, people note your power and treat you with the utmost respect. It's very possible in Starfinder that you are a nobody, having a completely different experience. Bottom line, there's no special reason Starfinder can't be Owlcat's next game, and I really hope the community gets what they want. That wraps up all my thoughts regarding Owlcat's future Pathfinder games, but again, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Which adventure path would work best? Are there some paths I didn't mention that you think would work even better? Looking forward to hearing your feedback and hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care!